Joining me right now is Louisiana Congressman, Minority Whip, House Energy and Commerce Committee member Steve Scalise. Congressman, it's always great to see you. Thanks so much for spending the time with me this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Great to be back with you.
Well, we have a map that shows the rate of inflation in other countries. I mean, this is all checkable. This is a very simple thing to check, in terms of fact checking. They're all lower than the United States. Of course, we know the inflation rate in the United States is right now 8.6%, but that's the average. Some of the things that we buy so much of are much higher than 8.6%. Like, for example, butter is up 15%. The price of eggs, a dozen eggs, is up 32% year over year. And this map shows the rate of inflation in other countries all lower than the United States right now. Your reaction to Biden's misinformation?
Yeah, and this is a disturbing pattern we've seen from President Biden on so many of the problems that he's created that are hurting families, is that he just blames everybody else. Maybe they don't have mirrors in the White House, but he's looking around and he's pointing fingers, he's throwing spaghetti at the walls, and nobody's buying it because they're watching his policies destroy so many parts of the fabric of the country. Look at gasoline prices. We're over 100% higher than when Joe Biden took office, more than double, over $5 a gallon. And look at the long list that he's blamed instead of himself for that. It was Putin, it was the oil companies, it was the pandemic. He's blamed refineries. He supported a bill that passed by Speaker Pelosi to allow you to sue your local gas station if you don't like the price. The only thing they haven't done is support increasing production in America. He's going to fly to Saudi Arabia, probably 5,700 miles on Air Force One. Who knows what the carbon footprint of that flight's going to be to beg them to produce more oil. But he won't let American companies produce oil here. He doesn't even have to fly less than 1,000 miles to Port Fourchon, Louisiana, where they would say, yes, we'll drill here in America, lower emissions, more money for America, lower gas prices at the pump. But he says no to that. And then he thinks that he can blame other people. Everyone knows it's Joe Biden's policies that are creating these dramatically higher prices than we're seeing anywhere else. And surely what we paid just 2 years ago when we had a great, robust energy policy.
Yeah, and he goes around Congress by doing executive orders and sort of lots of fees and threats about companies doing business with fossil fuels. So how does he get away with coming out and attacking the oil companies? We're seeing Exxon Mobil fight back. The head of Exxon Mobil writes a statement back at President Biden after he threatened gas companies with emergency powers, blaming the oil companies for record high gasoline. So the letter Exxon sends back is Exxon writes in a statement that they've been investing more than any other company to develop U.S. oil and gas supplies. The government can promote investment through clear and consistent policy that supports U.S. resource development. But, Congressman, you know as well as I know that the climate change agenda is permeating throughout the government. It's not just Joe Biden. We can't blame Joe Biden only here. It's his cabinet. It's the Democrats. It's AOC. It's Bernie Sanders. It's the Democrat Congress that is actually also pushing this whole narrative of avoiding fossil fuels.
Absolutely. And by the way, his regulating agencies and the financial agencies, the SEC, the CFPB, the whole alphabet soup of federal agencies are coming after energy companies. We had the heads of the oil and gas companies before the Energy and Commerce Committee a few weeks ago. I asked the head of Exxon Mobil, as well as all the other heads. I held up a list of the mountains of regulations that Joe Biden's put against American energy. And I said, is this hurting your ability to produce more and lower the price of gasoline? And they all said, yes, of course it is. And Joe Biden won't reverse that. He campaigned saying he was going to end drilling in America. He bragged about it. And then he's given AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all the radicals in Washington, he's turned the policy over to them to go after American companies like energy companies. And then the prices went through the roof and people got really angry and he tried to blame everybody else. It's Joe Biden's policies. Everybody knows that. He can change these policies today. He just won't because he's beholden to the radical left.
Yeah, well, there are also policies around gun laws, and we know that when there is a shooting, this administration immediately jumps to change gun legislation. We have a new Fox News poll shows that a majority of voters do not support the protests outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. 55% said that they were inappropriate. The president signed the bipartisan legislation yesterday, boosting security for the justices and their families, but he still has not spoken out at all about an attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh more than a week after the incident. Congressman, you were a target of violence from the left. Earlier this week marked 5 years since the Congressional baseball shooting. We all thank God that you are safe and healthy and strong and survived that. Mass shootings account for less than 4% of gun homicides in a typical year. Tell me about that day and what you would say about gun legislation changes.
Well, and first, Maria, I appreciate that. You know, God performed miracles that day. There were real life heroes on the ball field that day that kept me and over a dozen other members of Congress alive when this gunman went out on the ball field and his goal was to kill every Republican. And because law enforcement was there, Capitol Police, Virginia Police, with guns, they countered the shooter and they took him down. And that's why we're alive today. So when you see the Democrats talking about defunding the police and going after law-abiding gun owners, you know, it just shows you what their agenda is, how out of touch it is. Why hasn't President Biden, as you pointed out, spoken out against this death threat against a Supreme Court justice, an attempt to undermine democracy? But also, every single day, there's violations of federal law because federal law says you can't go to the home of a judge to try to threaten or bully them or intimidate them to change their view on an issue that's before them. And yet it's happening every day in front of multiple justices' houses. And the Merrick Garland, the entire Justice Department is just sitting idle. They need to confront this as well because you're seeing the dangers that could come.
Really, really disturbing stuff here, Congressman. Thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Great being with you, Maria. Thank you. God bless.
All right. Steve Scalise joining us this morning. We appreciate it. God bless you.